Alright. My bad. I'm having technical difficulty with this guy. Excuse my mouth. With the Zoom. But anyway, I'm just gonna do it this way. I'll do it this way. I'll show you guys this way, okay? Check in, guys. Can you see me? Let me show you. Sorry, guys. Can y'all see me? Thanks for coming back. I'm gonna do it this way because I can't seem to get my Zoom to work. But I really want to show you guys this information, more important than anything. Just want to show you this. I'm gonna pull it up from here. Thank you for coming back. I was trying to show y'all this data that I think is really important to talk about. All right. Can you see this? Can you see this? So when we talk about this map, that is the 5th Congressional District, also known as Southeast Queens, right? So when we talk about community, you want to define your community within a geographical location. So like we say South Side, you'll say East New York, Canarsie, Brownsville, but you want to identify the geographical location of your area, right? So for our purposes, I did Southside. I considered it to be the 5th Congressional District for all of Southeast Queens. And that's what you see here. I'm sorry I got to do it like this. I'll get better with this technology thing. So now the funny thing about it, so we talk about leveraging building economic development, right? And you think about the people that are impacted by the COVID crisis economically. We're talking about people of color. Blacks are 48% of the population in Southeast Queens, a number of over 300,000 people. Hispanics are 21% of the population. Over 100,000 people. Asians are 14% of the population. That also includes Asians and South Asians. And we know in Queens we have a big South Asian population. Shout out to my Bengalis and my Guyanese family and everybody. And whites make up 17% of the population, right? So when you're trying to identify an opportunity within your market, you want to make sure that you know the demographics in your area, right? Cool. Leveraging human capital. So, for example, now this is interesting. Now, blacks make up 50% of the population. They bring in 50% of the income, an aggregate number of $9 billion. Can you see that? Sorry, I got to do it this way, right? So now this is interesting, and this is why we want to talk about economic disaster recovery, because the challenge is that we were already in a compromising situation, so to speak, and a disaster. If you didn't have a strong foundation, if your business or your job or your community didn't have a strong foundation, a strong local economy, then one disaster can knock it out. And that's what we're going to see. We are seeing with our local businesses. So blacks make up 48% of the population. They bring in a 50% of the income, an aggregate number of $9 billion, according to the census. Now, I'm just going to skip through this real quick because I want to show you guys something. Now, this is data. This is very important. This is what I want to talk about. So, for example, a lot of times we talk about minorities. How many times y'all hear that word on the news? Minority, right? Minorities include blacks, Hispanics, Asians, right? And just people of color, non-white groups. The challenge when we talk about economic development, right? And what is economic development? I'm sorry, does it sound like a fancy word? What is economic development? It's simple. It's just the production and consumption of goods and services. It's creating and distributing goods and services. That's all economic development is. Don't let anybody make you seem like it's more complicated than that. right? But I want us to look at this. So when we talk about minorities, you think about the economy, right? So for example, I'm gonna use Southeast Queens as an example. Blacks are 48% of the population. They bring in 50% of the income, an aggregate number of $9 billion. Now, if you are 50% of the population, 50% of the income that comes into that specific area, how much of the business market do you think that population should be? I'm asking. If you're 50% of the population, you're 50% of the income that flows into that community, how much of the business market do you think people should be? You would think 50%, right? I would think 50%. Look at the numbers. Now, this is according to a think tank in Washington, D.C. We just put the numbers in a cool chart. I hope you guys can see this. So this is for New York City, right? Population and businesses of New York City. And this is, and I'm highlighting the issue, the term of minority when we're talking about economic development. So blacks in New York, black residents in New York make up 24.5% of the population. But they're only 2% of the business market. 2%. So you're 24% of the population, but you're only 2% of the business market. And if for those of us that don't know, small businesses are what create jobs. Small businesses are what create jobs in this country. How many people on this line actually work for a small business? And a small business is any private agency that has at least 500 employees or less. That's a small business. So you're 24%. So if you just see the numbers, just look at that. So even if you think about Southeast Queens, how can you be 50% of the population, 50% of the wealth that comes into that community, but only 2% of the business market? Now look at this. Hispanics are 20 similar, same. Black and Hispanics is similar. Hispanic residents make up 28% of the market in New York City, and they're less than 7% of the small business firms. Now, these are still minorities. Black and Hispanics are still considered minorities. Y'all see that? Now, let's move on to Asians. Now, Asians are 13% of the market. 13% residents. There's 13% of all the residents in New York City that are Asian, 13.5%. And they're 17% of the business market. So they have more businesses than they have people. Let's move over to the other demographic. Here we have white. Can you guys see that? I'm sorry. I hope you guys can see this. I'll do better next time. Whites are 48% of the population, 72% of the business market. Oh, duh. Sorry, guys. Let me do this. There we go. Right? So look at that. So now let's look at the word minority. You see minority? Minorities are 51% of the population, 26% of the business market. So when you talk about minority, you'll say, okay, well, if you consider yourself a minority, you would say, we're doing pretty good. We're 50% of the population. Okay. They're 50% of the population, 26% of the market. But now let's just unpack this word minority. Blacks, you are a part of this minority number, right? But you're not at 26%. You're not at 26%. You are at 2%. Do you see how misleading that can be? I want us to get this, right? Because it's so important. It's so important that we change the conversations. But that's the life. That's the lie, though. What you mean that's the lie, though? What does that mean? All right. We have to change our conversation. You have to know. You have to speak up for yourself and your self-interest and your community self-interest, right? And the numbers speak for itself. I want to share something else with you guys. everyone's excited about the loans. About the SBA grants and loans to everybody. How many people have heard about SBA? Apply for these loans, apply for these grants. How many people have heard about that? I want you guys to see how important it is for us to change our relationships, our political relationships, and our financial relationships. So this is a study that we got from a think tank in DC, right? They did a blind study with banks where they had the control and the protected. So the control was a Caucasian business owner. The protected was an African American business owner. They had the same profile. They had the same credit profile. Okay, they had the same credit profile. They all went into the same banks to get a particular loan, right? This was a real study. This is a real study, and anybody can email me, and I'm more than happy to share some of this information, not all. So just check this out, right? So when they went into the bank, so you have a black business owner and you have a white business owner, right? This happens at the human level, which is why I want to talk about our civic power, right? How we have to change our relationships at the human level and at the civic level. But just check this out. So when we're talking about sending people to apply for these loans and apply for these grants through SBA, we got to have real conversation about what's happening in these financial institutions anyway. How many people have access to their bank right now? I know in Southeast Queens specifically, a lot of them are closed. Just 2 weeks ago, I had to drive all the way to Sheepshead Bay in Brooklyn just to get some banking service. So let's talk about this. All right, I want to show you guys this information. So a black entrepreneur, white entrepreneur walk in the same bank, right? The teller speaks to the white entrepreneur. So this is the information that they have. So that these are the factors. So there's information requested by the bank officer, encouragement and assistance, and marital status. Check this out. So these are the survey items. So personal financial statements. Information was requested by the banker. Personal financial statements were requested 46% of the time for the Caucasian entrepreneur, compared to 65% of the time for the African American entrepreneur. Personal W-2 forms. The banker asked the Caucasian entrepreneur 0% of the time for their W-2 statements, 30.8% of the time for the black entrepreneur. I'm just going to skip down. This is the one I'm just going to skip. I'm not going to read all of it, but I just want to show you the one that I thought was really, really funny. Offered to help you complete an application, right? Now, how many people that you know that are business owners or just people in your community that get stuck on paperwork? People want to do things. People want to open up businesses. People want to open up nonprofits. People want to apply for grants. People want to apply for this, but we get stuck on the paperwork, right? Some people may not know how to write. Some people may not know how to interpret. They need the technical help, right? So you mean to tell me that you can go into the bank, right? The bank can actually provide you with that technical support. Guess how many times they ask? Offered to schedule an appointment to take the application. 23% for the white entrepreneur compared to 11% of the time for the African American entrepreneur. See that? This is another one. Thank you for coming in. This was funny to me. 96.2% of the time, the white entrepreneur was told thank you, compared to 80% of the time for the protected. And what that was so funny to me, because it was like, man, you can't get an equal thank you. Like you can't even get an equal thank you. Like how interesting is that, right? And again, this happens at the bank level. This was a particular bank officer, right? These were bank officers. So this wasn't policy. This wasn't government. These are people with jobs, right? Everyday people with jobs that are actually doing this. And this is why we're talking about your civic power, right? How do you know how to check people at a human level and leverage your civic right, to get things done? And it starts by just sharing this information. I'm just going to share this with you guys because I'm concerned about our kids. So we talk about they're not opening up the schools. They're not opening up the schools. Summer youth is closed. Everything's closed for the kids. I don't even know what the kids are doing while they're at home. But let me tell you what's happening in our market right now, right? So we know over last summer we had a big violence, it was a lot of violence happening amongst our youth, right? But look at the Bureau of Justice statistics. They report that when poverty is at a certain level, and people don't have jobs, there's gonna be challenges. And for those of you, I'm just gonna stop right there for a second. So for those of you that just joined, welcome. You're on my page, so you know my name, Latoya Benjamin, and we're talking about economic disaster recovery. But I started off by sharing just critical information that I think you guys need to just understand the whole concept of economic development, right? I want us to know this because I want you to take this information and apply it to your organization, apply it to whatever it is that you're doing. If you're not doing nothing, if you're looking to start doing something because you were impacted by COVID, right? This is the new normal. Things are not going back the way they were, and people have to adapt and adapt fast. So I want to work with everybody that is looking forward to positioning themselves within this opportunity. Okay, so that's what we're talking about. And just show everybody, hi Kyrie, hey Lawrence, Perry Towns, welcome, thank you for joining. Jason, thank you for joining. Hey Juan, thank you for joining. Annette, thank you for joining. Christopher, I see you. How are you? Terrain, how you doing? Alan, hey Alan, thanks for joining. Paula, Richard, Shamel, thank you. Thanks for joining, guys. Look forward to working with everybody. Hey LaShawn, welcome. Tonya, hey Tonya. Poppy, hey Poppy. Shatima, hey Shatima. We're gonna be talking about how we can help our churches during this time as well. Hey sis, welcome, Wavy. Thanks for joining. Hey King Kwa Cha. And Miss Jackson, hey Ma. Thank you for joining. All right, I'm gonna get back to the data, okay? All right. So when we talk about, so we're talking about the unemployment crisis. So think about the kids, right? So if they don't have nothing to do, think about when we were kids. If they don't have anything to do this summer, what do you think is going to happen? They took the basketball hoops down at the parks, right? There's no community centers in Southside. That's why it's called Southside We Outside, because we hang out outside because there's no community centers. I keep trying to tell people that when I'm at these meetings, like, oh, what about that community? What community centers? I've been here my whole life. We grew up in a park. Seriously. Okay, so look at the unemployment rate by age, 16 and 19-year-olds. Our unemployment rate for our 16 and 19-year-olds. Now, I'm talking about Southside. All this data is for Southside, Southeast Queens, Jamaica, South Ozone Park, Richmond Hill, Far Rockaway, Rosedale, Springfield Gardens, 27%. So 16 and 19-year-olds, 30% of the population don't have no job. And now they out of school, and now they can't even do summer youth. Now, how is Southside about to look this summer with this social distance and stuff? We got to come together and provide a solution for our own community. And it's not to point blame. You know, I believe that, especially even now that the elected officials, like everybody's working together, you know, this thing has hit everybody in a different way. But everyday people got to do their part too. We got to do our part too, outside of our jobs. Oh, I want to show y'all this. This is what's fun. So this is the map for, now I hope everybody signed that petition, that CRA petition, and there's so much to talk about, but I'm not going to share everything here. We'll have follow-up conversation. This is the map, the banking map. So when we talk about access to, I'm going to stop here because this is what I really wanted to talk to y'all about. When we talk about access to capital, when we talk about access to capital, guys, in order to get access to capital, you have to have a bank. Where are you guys banking now? This is a map. Now, remember we had started out talking about geographical location. So this is still the geographical location for Southeast Queens. This is a map of our banking district. You see that red? So inside the red is Southside. And you see this little thing here? This is JFK Airport. Where are the goddamn banks? So so after you submit your application online, where are you going to find your bank at? right? Look at Far Rockaway. 3 banks. Look at that. This may be like Rosedale kind of area. Jamaica, Richmond Hill over here. Where are y'all banking? And if you look, just look at other, if you just move around over here, this is like other parts of Queens. As you can see, they have more financial institutions. See? This matters. Look at it. That's what you're looking at is called a banking desert. Southeast Queens is a banking desert. Congressman Meeks held a hearing a couple of weeks ago. Shout out to him for making that initiative to call attention to the lack of banks. Senator Sanders did a similar hearing 2 years ago, as well as put some policies, introduced some new legislation to create additional financial institutions. So I just want you guys to see that. Like, we have to talk about that. And that's why we need to hashtag. I need you guys to share your stories, your banking stories, and hashtag CRA for us. Because we have to call attention to the lack of banking services. We're not going to make it without having no banks in our community. Who are you going to talk to? Right? You shouldn't have to travel outside your community just to talk to a banker, right? So I wanted to share that with you guys. And I think, okay, this one I want to show you guys. So this is, I put this together. So a lot of times people don't understand how government work and how politics work. I know Trump has made politics appealing. My battery's about to die, so I definitely got to end this soon. Okay, so I want to show you guys this. This is the political structure for Southeast Queens. Okay, this is how you need, so there's 3 levels of government, right? So we know the federal level, there's the federal level, the state level, and the local level, right? So the federal level, we always talk about Trump, right? And then you have federal representatives. But this is just locally. These are your 3 layers of government at your local level. So here at the top, for those of you that don't know, I encourage you to just get a pen and just write this down. But we have at the top of that federal level, Congressman Gregory Meeks, that is of the 5th Congressional District, and that's a part of Southside. When I made this, we had Melinda Katz was the borough president. She is now the new Queens District Attorney. You guys need to know that. Then we have here at the state level, Senator Joseph Addabbo, Senator Leroy Comrie, Senator Sanders. If you guys don't know, there are 2 state representatives at the state level. There's a state senate and there's an assembly. At the assembly level, you have Vivian Cook, Assembly Member Clyde Vanell, Assemblywoman Alicia Hyman, Titus, her seat is up. There's a lot of people running for this seat right here, and Stacey Pfeiffer in Far Rockaway. And then at the local level, you have Donovan Richards, Councilman Donovan Richards, Councilman Danique Miller, and Councilwoman Adrienne Adams, and this is their last term. Donovan Richards' last term and Danique Miller's last term, and there are people in these races as well. So that's what I wanted to share about does that make sense to everybody? And you can do, if you're not from Southeast Queens, you can do this for your specific area. I recommend you pick your geographical location at the state or the federal level, and then map out who your elected officials are, right? All right, this is the last one I'm going to share about opportunity zones. Opportunity zones, so there are specific areas in the community that's designated as opportunity zones. What that means is that investors can come into that area and purchase and do business, and it's a whole, I can't even get into it right now. But it's national gentrification if we don't take responsibility, if we don't be proactive in what type of developments we want to see in our community. That is all I'm going to share right now. So I wanted to just share that with you guys. I hope that wasn't too much. Some people say I share too much information, but I did want to just give you guys like that content. There's so much stuff that I want to talk about. But in any event, we have launched the Economic Leadership Council, right? So I'm encouraging anybody that is interested. It's nonpartisan, it's not political. It's just about economic development, right? So I'm encouraging entrepreneurs, small business owners, just people that are interested in being civically engaged or want to do something different. Come join me and my team. I have a national team. We have people from DC, Texas, Florida on our team, making things happen. We're going to be putting information out there and giving people the information and the strategy necessary to survive this COVID pandemic economically, right? We have to reimagine where we're going to go. We have to reimagine what type of jobs we're going to do. We have to reimagine what industries we want to be in. We have to reimagine our skills, right? We're going to have to forget everything that we learned in school and adopt new skills, right? And we're going to have to work with people that we may not have been used to working with. We're also going to have to believe in ourselves, right? If I can't tell you how many times just being from Southside and being the first person in my family to graduate, sometimes when I went in a room, how sometimes I felt like I didn't belong or people were better than me in a certain way just because I didn't come from a certain background. And then I get in a room, right? And I sit at the table with these same people that I feel a little intimidated by. And I know exactly what they're talking about. Not only do I know what they're talking about, I have something to add to the table, right? Who would have thought? I'll show you my high school diploma, my high school report card. It was horrible. So who would have thought? So I say that just to encourage people. Don't be intimidated. I had somebody tell me that because my title was Director of Economic Development, they didn't know how to speak to me. And I don't like that. I felt bad because I wanted, you have to be able to speak to people, right? And I know what it's like to be intimidated, but now is not the time. So we have to also talk about breaking down those barriers where if you're having a challenge talking to somebody that has the information that you need to move forward, we have to start talking about that. Okay, fine. So in any event, I'm going to wrap this video up. It's my first one. I hope I shared some information that was useful to you. Sorry if I was like all over the place. I'll get better, but we're going to do this we're going to be doing this a lot more. Our next event with the Economic Leadership Council is going to take place next Wednesday. It's going to be a conference call where we could just talk. I could talk to you, you guys could talk to me, and we can come up with some ideas and strategies on what we want to do moving forward with this council. I welcome you to join me. We have a Facebook page. It's the Economic Leadership Council. I encourage you to think about what's happening with your banks. Where have you been able to go to the bank? What have been some horror stories, that happened to you at the bank, or some good stories? Or what do you think? How do you think the banks can improve helping the community where you live? You write that on your social media. Hashtag CRA for us. CRA for us. All right. So I want to thank you all. Hey, Ronald. I want to thank you all for joining me. Hey, Charles. I want to thank you all for joining me. I hope this information was useful, and I will talk to you guys later. Economic Leadership Council, share the page, like the page, share the story, hashtag CRA for us, right? Bye. Okay, finish.